Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Padajana Randana. Yashodanandana Padajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tiravanachari. Yamuna Tiravanachari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari. Jaya Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravajakacharya Ashtotar the Sri Srimad, His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravajakacharya Ashtotar the Sri Srimad, His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananda Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Srila Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Okay. So Chad, I get text number 7.
That's correct. Haribol.
Haribol, thank you. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this 25th day of November 2024 in San Diego, reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we are in chapter 15, the Yoga of the Supreme Person, page 599, text number 7. Maybe help her get the right. 599.
Chapter 15, text 7.
Okay, 15:7. Got it? Okay. Mamai vangsho jiva loke jiva bhutaha sanatanaha manah shashtanindriyani pakatistani karshati mamai vangsho jiva loke jiva bhutak sanatanaha manakshastan indriyani pakatistani karshati mamai vangsho jiva loke jiva bhutak sanatanaha manakshastan indriyani pakatistani karshati mamai vangsho jiva loke jiva bhutak sanatanaha manakshastan indriyani pakatistani karshati mamai vangsho jiva loke jiva bhutak sanatanaha manakshastan indriyani pakatistani karshati mamai vangsho jiva loke jiva bhutak sanatanaha manakshastan indriyani pakatistani karshati. Can she chant? Mamai vangsho jiva loke jiva bhutak sanatanaha manakshastan indriyani pakatistani karshati. Bhakta Chad.
Mamai vangsho jiva loke
Mamai vangsho jiva loke
jiva bhuta sanatanaha
jiva bhutak sanatanaha
manashastan indriyani
manakshastan indriyani
praktistani karshati.
and pakatistani karshati. All right, I'll do the word by words myself. You just read along. Mama, my, eva, certainly, angshaha, fragmental particle. Jiva loke, in the world of conditional life. Jiva bhutaha, the conditioned living entity. Sanatanaha, eternal. Manaha, with the mind. Shashtani, the six. Indriyani, senses. Prakriti, in material nature. Stani, situated. Karshati, is struggling hard. Translation. The living entities in this conditioned world are my eternal fragmental parts. Due to conditioned life, they are struggling very hard with the six senses, which include the mind. Purport. In this verse, the identity of the living being is clearly given. The living entity is the fragmental part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, eternally. It is not that he assumes individuality in his conditional life and in his liberated state becomes one with the Supreme Lord. He is eternally fragmented. It is clearly said, Sanatanaha. According to the Vedic version, the Supreme Lord manifests and expands himself in innumerable expansions, of which the primary expansions are called Vishnu Tattva, and the secondary expansions are called the living entities. In other words, the Vishnu Tattva is the personal expansion, and the living entities are the separated expansions. By his personal expansion, he is manifested in various forms like Lord Rama, Nrsingadev, Vishnumurti, and all the predominating deities in the Vaikuntha planets. The separated expansions, the living entities, are eternally servitors. The personal expansions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the individual identities of the Godhead, are always present. Similarly, the separated expansions of living entities have their identities. As fragmental parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord, the living entities also have fragmental portions of his qualities, of which independence is one. Every living entity as an individual soul has his personal individuality and a minute form of independence. By misuse of that independence, one becomes a conditioned soul. And by proper use of that independence, he is always liberated. In either case, he is qualitatively eternal, as the Supreme Lord is. In his liberated state, he is freed from this material condition, and he is under the engagement of transcendental service unto the Lord. In his conditioned life, he is dominated by the material modes of nature, and he forgets the transcendental loving service of the Lord. As a result, he has to struggle very hard to maintain his existence in the material world. The living entities, not only human beings and the cats and dogs, but even the greater controllers of the material world, like Brahma, Lord Shiva, and even Vishnu, are all parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord. They are all eternal, not temporary manifestations. The word karshati, struggling or grappling hard, is very significant. The conditioned soul is bound up as though shackled by iron chains. He is bound up by the false ego, and the mind is the chief agent which is driving him in this material existence. When the mind is in the mode of goodness, his activities are good. When the mind is in the mode of passion, his activities are troublesome. And when the mind is in the mode of ignorance, he travels in the lower species of life. It is clear, however, in this verse, that the conditioned soul is covered by the material body, with the mind and the senses. And when he is liberated, this material covering perishes, but his spiritual body manifests itself in its individual capacity. The following information is there in the Madhyandinayana Shruti. Sava esha brahmanishta idam shariram martyam atsridya brahmabhisampadya brahmana pashyati brahmana srinoti brahmana vedam sarvam anubhavati. It is stated here that when a living entity gives up this material embodiment and enters into the spiritual world, he revives his spiritual body. And in his spiritual body, he can see the Supreme Personality of Godhead face to face. He can hear him and speak to him face to face, and he can understand the Supreme Personality as he is. From Srimad Bhagavatam 3:15-14, also it is understood, Vasanti yatra purusha sarve vaikunta murtiyaha. In the spiritual planets, everyone lives in bodies featured like the Supreme Personality of Godheads. As far as bodily construction is concerned, there is no difference between the part and parcel living entities and the expansions of Vishnu Murti. In other words, at liberation, the living entity gets a spiritual body by the grace of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The words Mamai Vangshaha, fragmental parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord, are also very significant. The fragmental portion of the Supreme Lord is not like some material broken part. We have already understood in the second chapter that the spirit cannot be cut into pieces. This fragment is not materially conceived. It is not like matter, which can be cut into pieces and joined together again. That conception is not applicable here, because the Sanskrit word sanatana, eternal, is used. The fragmental portion is eternal. It is also stated in the beginning of the second chapter that in each and every individual body, the fragmental portion of the Supreme Lord is present. Dehinosmin yata dehe. That fragmental portion, when liberated from the bodily entanglement, revives its original spiritual body in the spiritual sky, in a spiritual planet, and enjoys association with the Supreme Lord. It is, however, understood here that the living entity, being the fragmental part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, is qualitatively one with the Lord, just as the parts and parcels of gold are also gold. Om Jnana Timurandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara, the disciplic succession. So, this is one of the most quoted verses of the Bhagavad Gita, and it's here near the beginning of this chapter, although it's a short chapter. And this is the famous chapter describing this world as an upside-down banyan tree. And Prabhupada he coined that term, perverted reflection. So it's like a distorted reflection. It means that what's there in the spiritual world is also here, but in a kind of skewed way. And meaning that we have different rasas that we try to enjoy. We have children, you have wife, and husband like that, and friends, and all the same rasas that we read about in Krishna book. But in the spiritual world, these rasas are exchanges of love, and they go on eternally, and they produce different varieties of bliss. In the material world, there are sources of great pleasure, but the pleasure is temporary and limited. Limited by time and limited by our own consciousness. So, but because we're fragmental parts of Krishna, we're part and parcel, just like, as Prabhupada would give the analogy, very appropriate here, we're 2 blocks from the ocean. You take a little vial of the ocean water and you taste it. Do you think it'll be salty? Yes, because the whole ocean is salty, right? Similarly, the sun rays, another example is the sun rays. We're all familiar with the sun comes up, the brilliant sun is shining, sun shines into your sunshine comes into your room. So what is that sunshine? So scientifically they've analyzed it. There's all these photons, these minuscule little like atoms, and they have a little bit of light and a little bit of heat. The sun has infinite light and heat, right? You look up in the sky, it's so bright, you can hardly look at it. And we know in the summertime, and the sun we have more sun and it's more direct, that it gets warm, very hot. So the sun, nature has this quality of emanating heat and light. And each of those rays, those sun rays, has a little bit of heat and light. So similarly, we are particles of pure spirit. And one of the most encouraging things you learn when you read the Bhagavad Gita, that you never die. You'll never die. None of us will die here. Nor were we born. Now, the bodies that we inhabit were born at a certain time, and eventually they'll die. See? But we ourselves are not the body. That's the first lesson you learn in the first day of living in the temple or reading the books. You're not the body. You're pure spirit, animating the body. And we can look around us, so we see so many other bodies. There's dogs, there's cats, there's insects, there's mice, there's these trees living out here. You know, they're as much living entities as we are. But because of some gross sin in the previous life, they've lost the human life, and they've now taken birth as trees. The consciousness is very rudimentary. You know, but there was a book, I remember reading this book many years ago, The Secret Life of Plants. And I think he mentioned there, Dr. Bose, he mentioned the Indian scientist who did these tests. And if you have a house plant, and of course you water it, you put it in the sun, but if you wake up in the morning and every day you scream at that plant, so what are you, stupid plant? In other words, you're kind of crazy, but you're yelling at the plant. That plant will just wither up. It senses your anger and the bad vibes. The plants actually have feelings. Secret life of plants, who knew? But it makes perfect sense because there's a soul in there. And the soul is conscious, each living entity is unique and is separate. That's the whole point, one of the main points. Mama angsha jiva loka jiva with sanatana. Now Prabhupada, following in the line of all of our acharyas, takes this sanatana to describe not just that the soul is eternal, but that the soul is eternally an angsha of the Lord, of the Supreme Lord. Angsha means a little particle, infinitesimal, like atomic. So that's a very important understanding, because it means that we have Krishna's qualities in minute degree. And one of those qualities, right, one he emphasizes always, is independence. We have a little independent will. Just like this boy here, he wanted to speak a lot. He wanted to converse, right? But now his mother said, no, shh. And he's being very obedient. But he has a free will. He could get up and run around for maybe a few seconds before his mother catches him. But we have that free will. And that's how we came here. Because why does Krishna give us that free will? Because without the free will, there's no question of love. It's such a memorable quote from Prabhupada. I remember listening to a tape. He said, Krishna does not want us to love him at the point of a revolver. Love me or else. That's not love. That's slavery, Just like I'll tell you, because, I've been editing these books for so long, and there's certain words that, Prabhupada used them, and we become accustomed to them in the books, and we take it to mean one thing, but really the English definition is not right. The word servitude means slavery. It doesn't mean servitorship. Being a servant, we do it voluntarily. That's the whole point. Otherwise, yeah. So we're going to remove those servitudes in the books and make it servitorship. You can probably use that word also. The nature of a servant, you know. So the connotation of the words is so important, you know, in conveying the meaning. So this free will. Now, there's one verse. You haven't been attending my classes, but I quote this verse a lot, and it's a famous verse. Prabhupada will quote it sometimes. And it talks. It's in the 11th canto, the teachings of the 9 Yogendras. You remember who the 9 Yogendras were? 9 Yogendras are 9 of the sons of Rishabhdev. He had 100 sons. The most famous of whom was Bharat himself. But 9 of those sons, when the father, because after he gave the lesson in the 5th canto, he'd take sannyas, right? So. Who's going to become the king? So Bharat became the king, and he had 91 of his brothers, 90 of his brothers, who were helping him run the kingdom. It's Bharatavarsha, the world. But 9 immediately took sannyas, and they became the 9 Yogendras, very learned, and they appear in the 11th canto. They each come on the stage and give us a separate lesson. You know, it's very wonderful. How do we know the different levels of the devotees? Well, one of the 9 Yogendras is explaining that. What is a Majjhima Adhikari? Ishvare tadarideshu bhalisheshu jishvatsacha prema maitri people picture yakaroti samajjhima. And we're meant to come to this stage of Majjhima Adhikari. Majjhima Adhikari meaning recognizes 4 different categories of people. Ishvare tad adineshu balisheshu dvishachucha. So Ishvara is the Lord. And for each different category of person or entity, you have a different relationship. So Ishvara, you cultivate love, priti, love. Adineshu, that refers to the devotees. So you cultivate friendship with the devotees, you see. Tad adineshu balisheshu, the innocent masses, those who are ignorant, but may be receptive to Krishna consciousness, so you have friendship for them, and you try to give them Krishna consciousness. And Vishatsu, the envious, you avoid. You see, this is Majjhima Adhikari. So we're meant to come to that point. So in the 9 Yogendras, one of their teachings is how does fear come about? How do we become conditioned? So there's this famous verse, Bhayam. Vidiyabhinaveshataksya ishadapetasya viparhiyo asmati tanmayato buddha abhajetam bhaktyakayesham gurudevitatma. So in that one verse, he describes the fall of the jiva and how you can get back to the spiritual world. So falling to this material world immediately means there's going to be fear. Even if you're a demigod, there's so many accounts in the Bhagavatam about how the demigods are always worrying the demons are going to try to, and then there's these fights, and they get evicted from their planets, right? The demigods, and they go to pray, and eventually Krishna comes, Vamana, he cheats Bali, and the whole thing. So, how do we fall? How do we fall? So, bhayam. Falling means becoming fearful because you're in a material body and you're alienated from the spiritual world. Vidya benabeshita, becoming absorbed in the dualities of the material world, good and bad, pleasure and pain. And ishad apetasya, you turn away from the isha. You're turning your face and your attention away from Krishna and toward the material world. And we have our minute independence. We can do that. And then what happens in Viparya, everything becomes reversed. Instead of being the servant, you try to be the master. And this is the great fallacy of conditioned life. We can't be the masters and the enjoyers, because that's not a constitutional position. So, Viparya asmati, and you forget everything about your spiritual identity. So that's the 2 lines he describes. Now, why does that happen? Tanmahayato, by the nature of Maya. Krishna's Maya energy is ready to delude us if we want that. If we want to forget Krishna, try to be master and enjoyer, then that's what the material world is all about, under the control of the Maya energy, the Krishna's external delusion. Tanmayato, so one has to be Buddha, one has to be intelligent. What to do? Well, turn back toward that Lord and start worshiping again. Tanmayato Buddha abhajetam. and worship him. How? Bhakti Aikayesham, with one pointed, sincere bhakti. Not as some kind of ritual that you do, as just for some external reason, but as your life and soul. Buddha Bhakti Aikayesham, and then Guru Devitatma, seeing one's guru as one's worshipable Lord and one's very self. In other words, it has to be that transparent, pure medium that can connect us to Krishna. So that one verse is so rich, Prabhupada would quote it a lot. So, but it's based on this idea, this understanding that we are Krishna's angsha. We are his part and parcels. We are connected to him, even though we don't know it. He's with us constantly as a super soul, and he wants us to come back because he's our Father. In the previous chapter, we learned in the beginning. How does it go? Oh my God. Sarva yonishu konteya murti ek sambhavanteya tasam brahma mahadyona aham bija padakrita. I am the seed-giving Father of everyone. So we are wayward children. We've wandered away from the protection and the loving care of our Father, of Krishna. And so Krishna makes every effort to help us to get back. He comes himself occasionally. And if you think about it, we are so fortunate that Krishna came a mere 5,000 years ago. He comes once in a day of Brahma. You know how long a day of Brahma is? Really, really long. Brahma's lifetime is 311 trillion 40 billion years. That's a long time. I'm almost 77 years old now. And I know that, I'm not going to live forever. I'm much more near to the end than the beginning. But I'm not panicking, because I know I have this little mantra that I worked. I don't know if you heard the class last night. So in Narantara, Narantara. Oh, you didn't. You were outside. Yeah. So he gives wonderful classes. So we're old friends. We joined in the same temple around the same time in Brooklyn. And he always calls on me and asks me to. So I said, well, I'm going to summarize your class. And once I stood up, and it goes like this. So at first I had to explain because there's a little grammar. You have to the word everybody. Everybody knows the word everybody, right? So, but then it's pronounced everybody. Everybody. It's not really pronounced everybody. You see. So everybody is two words. Right? Everybody, all of us, there's 5 of us here. We all have a body, so we belong everybody. But then there's the word everybody, which means everyone. Okay, so with that in mind, everybody dies, nobody dies. Wake up, and open your eyes. You're not that body, you're a pure spirit soul. Chant the holy name and attain life's goal. You can memorize that. They made a t-shirt of it for me, I have it in my closet. So that's like a lot of basic philosophy. Second chapter, 20th verse. Keyword, Najayate mrite va kadachan nayam budva bhavita manabuya ajo nityik shashvatoyam purano nahanyate hanyamane sharire. She knows that verse, right? I can see. That's very good, learning it. Because when you learn them that long, you'll never forget it. I know the kids people who are now in their 40s, they went to the Gurukul in Alachua or somewhere. I still remember those verses. So, such an important verse. For the soul, there is never birth nor death at any time. Najayate mriyate bhakadacha. They're not coming into being now. They won't come into the being in the future. They haven't come into being. In other words, we're as eternal as Krishna. It's not like new souls are being created. We're eternal. Ajo, unborn. Aja, Nitya, eternal, Shashrata, permanent, Purano, ancient, Nahanyate Handamane Sharire. When the body dies, the soul does not die. So death simply means, and Krishna uses this analogy a few verses later, maybe it's the next verse, that just as you eventually that little jacket you're wearing will grow old, or you'll outgrow it, right? And your mother will either discard it or give it away or something like that. So it's no big deal for you to give that one up. It's old anyway. You'll get 2 new ones, right? So the point is that he's telling Arjuna, don't worry about it. Arjuna is completely focused on the tragedy of him having to kill his beloved grandfather figure, Bhishma Dev, and his teacher, beloved teacher, Dronacharya, and so many other friends and relatives on the other side and on his own side. So he's just depressed about this particular battle. He's been through so many battles. He's a wonderful warrior. But never before has he faced a condition where so many of the people he's going to kill or be involved in killing are near and dear to him. So that's the whole dynamic of the Bhagavad Gita. And Krishna needs to raise Arjuna off of what we call the bodily platform. That these relationships are very temporary. Nobody's dying on this. They're simply undergoing a change of venue, so to speak, you know. and even if you don't fight, they're all going to die anyway, because that was my plan. You know, that was another argument. So the whole idea is to get Arjuna to see that there's something more important, his relationship to Krishna and doing his duty, than his physical relationship, bodily relationship, which is temporary. So Brahma, so now, just describing how fortunate we are. So Brahma lives for 311 trillion 40 billion years, which is a long time. And each day is, I think, 8,640,000,000 years, each 24-hour period. That's a long time. That's just one day in the life of Brahma. So Krishna comes once in every day of Brahma. So that's once 8 billion. So if he just came 5,000 years ago, it's like relatively like a snap of a finger, right? And Lord Chaitanya, he came even more recent than that, 500 years ago. And so how fortunate are we to have taken birth when Krishna just took birth and Lord Chaitanya was there, you know? We're very, very fortunate. We're very fortunate. So it's like getting a lottery ticket. You know, we won the lottery. Now we have to cash in the lottery ticket. The lottery ticket is being born as human being and being devotees, exposed to Srila Prabhupada and his wonderful teachings and his movement. So that's what this verse says. If you take advantage of it, if you're intelligent, then you'll practice one point in devotional service under the guidance of a guru who you should consider as your life and soul. You see, worshipful Lord. So this is, Prabhupada is teaching us here. We have the association of Krishna by his direct words, and we have Srila Prabhupada's association by his words. Prabhupada has said very, very distinctly, I remember hearing it recently, that the words of Krishna, just like the name of Krishna, is non-different from Krishna. So we're actually in the presence of the Lord, and he's pleased with that. That's why he's giving us so much encouragement internally to come into class and to practice devotional service. So the whole idea is we are eternally Krishna's Angsha, and we are, but in our present condition, within nature, material nature, we're struggling very hard. This word karshati, this means pulling, you know, it's a hard struggle for existence in this world. And manakshishtan indriyani, so the senses, including the mind is also the sixth sense, is what we're struggling with, and we're struggling to control them and to engage them in Krishna's service. So this verse is very, very key to understanding. And Prabhupada makes a point here, you know, again, that we're Sanatana, we are eternally Angsha, because there's a whole idea that we can also become infinite, and we, you know, the Mayavad idea, we just become Brahman, you know. But no matter how we try, we're going to constitutionally be that infinitesimal soul, and we will be subject to being overwhelmed by Maya, unless we are under the shelter of Krishna's lotus feet. So that's why bhakti is sure. Prabhupada would always quote this verse about how trying to simply attain the Brahman platform, impersonal Brahman, is not the secure platform. Eventually you follow that. Ye nye ravindaksha vimukta maninas tvayasta bhavad avishuddha buddhaya aruha kritrena parang padang tato patantyadho anadrita yushmarangraya. Very instructive verse. You know who chants this verse, where it comes from? The demigods. Krishna's in the womb, and they come secretly, and they're offering these prayers. This is the one that Prabhupada always quote. So they're glorifying the devotees. Then they say in this verse, but there are others, ye anye, O lotus-eyed Lord, Adavindaksha, ye anye who are vimukta manina. They think they're liberated because by great effort and austerity, and Prabhupada always add the word penance in there, penance and austerity, they've risen up to the Brahman platform, Parampadam. But they're not secure there, because there's nothing to do. The great benefit there is, no more birth, no more death, no more old age, no more disease. How wonderful it is. But that's negative. It's like, you know, liberation. right? You get liberation. Well, if that's all you did is liberated, then what do you do? Because you're an eternal person. We are a spirit soul, but we are personal. We have our spiritual body, we have our spiritual personality, and our spiritual desires. So therefore, he says, Aruha Krit Traina. Now, do you know what an onomatopoeia is? Probably not. No one will blame me if you don't know. You know, huh? You know? Okay, none of you know. So this is. I'm sure you recognize it as soon as I describe what it is. It's a word that means what it sounds like the word splash, right? It sounds like a splash. You see, others are. I can't think of another one in English, but there's so many like that. But in Sanskrit, there's so many also. And the word Krit Traina means like severe austerity, you see? And the word, and in Sanskrit, certain sounds are said to evoke certain emotions. The ND sound, like in Ananda, right? Nanda Nandana. So there's a verse by Rupa Goswami where you can listen, there's like a lot of ND sounds. So just hearing the verse will invoke Ananda, but to speak if you know the meaning. Nanda Nandana Padada Bindayo Syanda Mana Makadanda Bindava. Sindava Padamasauki Sambadam Nandayanda Bidiyam Mamanisham. It's a very nice verse. So Nanda Nandana, we know that's. Why is it Nanda Nandana? So Nanda Nandana means he who gives pleasure to Nanda. You see, Yashoda Nandana, the one who delights him by just being the son like that. So this is an address to Nanda Nandana Padaravindayo, from your 2 lotus feet. You say, oh Nanda Nandana. Syandamana means trickling. You see? Syandamana Makaranda Bindaba, are little drops of Makaranda. Because the lotus feet, there's a flower. So makaranda is the flower nectar that's sweet, and which the bees they concentrate it in the honey, in the hive, and they make honey out of it. So nandana padara syandamana makaranda bindaba. So from the lotuses of your 2 feet are trickling this makaranda, these drops of makaranda, bindu, but they're not actually bindus. They're actually sindhus. They're actually oceans. Sindhava Padamasauki Sambadam, which gives the greatest happiness by serving, you see? Sindhava Padamasauki Sambadam Nandayantu Vidiham Mamanisham. Nandayantu means, please delight me by allowing me to serve these lotus feet and drink this ocean of bliss. By this. Sindhava Padamasauki Sambadam Nandayantu Vidiyam Amanisham. Anisham means day and night. In other words, without blinking. Let me always drink this these honey-like drops, which are actually oceans of happiness. But you see the ND sound. Nanda Nandana Padara Bindayo Syandamana Makadanda Binda. So just even if you don't know the meaning, it still is a blissful, So this is a wonderful Sanskrit language. So, I think we explored this first. We are eternally we're struggling now within material nature because we've turned away from Krishna. And we're struggling with the senses and the 5 senses and the mind also. And we want to end that struggle by turning back to Krishna and serving him. Okay, any discussion on this verse? Chad, did you have any questions? I guess not. Hope we didn't put him to sleep. All right.
I'm here. Hare Krishna. No questions.
Okay, Prabhu. Haribol. I'm just kidding. Don't take any offense, please. We can go on. Text 8. Shariram yadavapnoti yachaput kramatishvaraha vihidvaitani sangyati Vayugandhani Vashayat. So here Krishna is explaining reincarnation with a very nice analogy. The living entity in the material world carries his different conceptions of life from one body to another as the air carries aromas. Thus he takes one kind of body and again quits it to take another. Purport. Here the living entity is described as Ishvara, the controller of his own body. If he likes, he can change his body to a higher grade, and if he likes, he can move to a lower class. minute independence is there. The change his body undergoes depends upon him. At the time of death, the consciousness he has created will carry him on to the next type of body. If he has made his consciousness like that of a cat or dog, he is sure to change to a cat's or dog's body. And if he has fixed his consciousness on godly qualities, he will change into the form of a demigod. And if he is in Krishna consciousness, he will be transferred to Krishna Loka in the spiritual world and will associate with Krishna. It is a false claim that after the annihilation of this body, everything is finished. The individual soul is transmigrating from one body to another, and his present body and the present activities are the background of his next body. One gets a different body according to karma, and he has to quit this body in due course. It is stated here that the subtle body, which carries the conception of the next body, develops another body in the next life. This process of transmigrating from one body to another and struggling while in the body is called karshati, or a struggle for existence. So very, very wonderful analogy Krishna gives here in the teaching. And just as a breeze will carry different aromas from one place to another, similarly, our subtle body, which is the mind, intelligence, and ego, does not perish when the physical body dies. You see, that's important. So you may remember in the 8th chapter, there's very important verses describing this process. He says, first of all, the ideal, antakale tamameva smaran mukva kalevaram yakpiyadi samadbhavam yastinat yatra sangsheya. So this is the whole ball game right there. Antakale tamameva, if one can remember me at the time of death, smaran mukva kalevaram, being liberated from the body's died. Yakpriyati samadbhavam, such a person comes to my nature, comes to the spiritual world. Yeah, there's no doubt about it. Then he gives the general principle. Young Babi, whatever. Young Babi, smarang bhavam, chachachande kalevam, tangtamevaiti konteya sadatad bhava bhavita. That whatever is the prominent thought, is the most dominant thought, which comes because of what you cultivated during your lifetime. We're making our future as each day. That will determine your future. So it's all in our hands, but we need knowledge. That's why the philosophy and the practice is so important. If we're chanting regularly, we come to increase our chanting and remembrance of Krishna, then we have a very good chance of remembering him at that critical moment. Like there's this Ashtaka. 8 verses. Keval Ashtaka, you've heard that before? Madhura Mirarebhyopi. So my favorite verse there in the 8, and I put that whole thing into a poem. I don't know if I sent you my poems. You have to write to me. Dravida 108. Okay. So this is one of these, all these 8. And my favorite one there is Nikshvase nahi vishvaso kadarudho bhavishyati kirtani mata balyad hare namaiva kevalam. Remember that our final breath may come at any time, no matter if we're old and sick or in our youthful prime. So young and old alike should chant the name incessantly. The holy name of Shri Hari is surely all that be. So that's a very important instruction. Driving here, we have these roads, and you just go along, Now, when I was back in I was in the movement at this time. I don't know, like say the early 80s. So the speed limit was 55 miles an hour on every road, But no one would go 55, They would push it, go 60, maybe 65, But nowadays it's 65. You go on here at 65. And you have a lane where the guys are going to go 80 miles an hour, As if like, hey, But it can be horrific accidents. Prabhupada points it out. It's so dangerous. So this is what the material world is. It's danger at every step. And therefore, if we're smart, we have to come to the point of remembering Krishna all the time. It's not easy because we're conditioned souls. We have so many habits. But that's what the chanting helps. The more that we can chant, go to the kirtan melas, the festivals are wonderful. We spend a whole day chanting in front of Jagannath and serving, and So the whole process of Krishna consciousness is to help us come to that point of constant remembrance of Krishna. And just in case, you probably never heard of this before, I gave it the name, so I know you never heard of it, and that is the Krishna Katashtaka in the 12th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. You never heard of it. It just so happened there are 8 verses about the glories of glorification of Krishna, of chanting and hearing. There are other sections that also glorify that, but this is like the pinnacle. And I don't know how much you studied the first canto. There's 5 in the 5th chapter. This is the chapter where Vyasadeva is Narada Muni is encouraging Vyasadeva to write the Bhagavatam. You just sit in meditation and think of Krishna and you'll be inspired. So he starts out by kind of chastising him, because he's a little disappointed. And basically what Narada Muni is telling him, yes, because you wrote all these books that didn't purely deal with Krishna and his devotional service and his devotees. You see? So the same as first, Nayad bachas chitta padang hare yasho jagat pavitram pragonita karachit tad vayasam tirtam ashanti manasam nanayata hangsa nidamanti shikshaya. You heard some of that? This is the famous verse, the pilgrimage of crows. Because that's the first verse of instruction. Those words, those works of literature, may be very nicely composed in beautiful Sanskrit, but they don't deal with Krishna and his devotional service and so forth. They're like a pilgrimage place for crows, which is very obviously a garbage dump, even though there's such nice language. But on the other hand, tad bhagvasargo janataga viplavo yasmin pati shlokam abadnavatapi namanyanantasya yashon kitanayak shrinvanti gayanti gunanti sarva. That even though another work of literature, every verse may be miscomposed, it's rudimentary, it's made a lot of mistakes. But if it wholly and solely deals with the glories of Krishna, it is a work of literature that's meant to bring about a revolution in this misdirected civilization, right? Then the sadhus, they relish it, they hear it, they chant it, they sing it like that. So those 2 verses also appear at the end of the book. Vishwanath Chakravarti points out this is the virtual beginning, 5th chapter, 1st canto. And this other thing is 12th canto, I think 13th chapter, something like that, practically the end. He said these verses bracket the whole Bhagavatam. They're very important. So I'm not going to go through all 8, but I can give you the reference. If you write me about the poetry, I'll give you the reference. So, but the very last verse I learned from reading that wonderful biography that Bhakti Vikas Swami wrote about Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. I don't know if you have it. You can download it. If you don't, it's free. So it's broken up. There's little sections about his life story and then different subject like that. And one of them is the verses that he would always chant. Like we have this book of Prabhupada's favorite verses, Bhaktisiddhanta's favorite verses, and one of those verses is the last verse in this Krishna Katashtaka. So the whole idea is that he's glorifying Krishna above anything else, and then at the end he gives the benefit of really becoming dedicated to glorifying Krishna, which is, you can see Prabhupada did that, from morning, as soon as he got up, he would take a quick shower and start, writing his books, and then finally, he would, devotees would come for morning darshan and he would be glorified all day, every day. So the result of all that, of hearing and chanting, glorifying, is constant remembrance. It's called avismriti. Now, when I worked on this book, as an editor, and the natural translation of avismriti would be remembrance, but it's more than remembrance. It's never forgetting, which means constant remembrance. Very important distinction, you see, avismriti. So here's the benefits. Avismriti Krishna padara bindayo chinotya badhani chashantanoti sattvasya shuddhim padamatma bhaktim jnanam cha vijnana viraga yuktam. So the whole thing is in that one verse. So this coming to the point of constant remembrance, which is, after all, you remember there's a very famous verse. What does it say? Smartavyak satatam Vishno vismartavyam najatachit sarva vidinashedakshu etayoreva kinkana This is another verse that says all of the different practices of bhakti, from getting up early in the morning, brushing your teeth, chanting Hare Krishna, coming to Mangal Arati, reading the books, doing everything that helps you be Krishna conscious. They all serve this one principle, to remember Krishna and come to the point of always remembering. Smartavyak satatam Vishnu, and vismartavya, and not never remembering him. The Jatishit. Sarva Vidi, all the other instructions, Nishedaksyur, are like servants of this one principle. They're meant to help us to remember more and more Krishna. So this is the benefit. So he said, Avismati, of constant remembrance of Krishna's lotus feet, brings these benefits. So at first, Chinotya Badhani, everything inauspicious is destroyed in your life. Chinoji abadhani, the shang tanoti, and it gives shang. Shang is the part of Krishna's name, of Vishnu, Shiva's name. Shambhu, Sankara, means that he brings good fortune to all. Shiva spreads good fortune, So shang tanoti expands your good fortune, and it destroys everything inauspicious. Then it goes on, sattvasya shuddhim. Your whole consciousness, your being becomes purified. Sattva Paramatma Bhaktim, and devotional servants of the Supreme Soul, Krishna, characterized by knowledge, jnana, vijnana, realized knowledge, and vairagya, and detachment. So that's and I'm sorry, we are started a little late, and we've kind of run out of time, and they're going to blow the conch. So thank you for your attention. I'll give you one little motto, because I always end with a poem. Since pleasure is a dream, Krishna is supreme. The aim is prem, and the way is the name. All glory to Srila Prabhupada. As part of the poetry file, you'll see it.
Otherwise, I'm going to ask you, your audio recordings, like Amala Bhaktapu's audio recordings are easily available on YouTube. Are yours also on YouTube? Are they available somewhere? Because I was looking for...
I don't think so. But you just write to me. I have them on my drive in the sky. What is it called?